If this is the first time that you're joining us, welcome. Feel free to pop in the chat and say hello. Let us know where you're coming from. We'll be taking questions as we go through. We've got some of our team members kind of watching chat as well. This session, I know, has kind of been a long time coming. It really kind of goes back to some of the great things that we've been seeing coming out of Microsoft, some updates
Trying to make
different services.
Making some changes, bringing some new technology in.
Yeah,
it's
so
a good sign.
I guess this is a validation that ADCS is not dead.
It's not dead.
Despite what some of our competitors out there may be saying for the last 20 years. But in our December webinar, we kind of got onto the subject and we said, hey, I think this would make a great little webinar for January. So here we are. As we go through, I'd be really interested to see if anyone has actually heard of the new CRL partitioning, or even more if anyone has used it.
That's what I'm kind of hoping to get from clients. Are they hearing about it? Are they talking about it? Are they looking at it for 26?
Yeah.
We've been doing research, for a little while now since they first started talking about it. Microsoft actually released it in kind of drips and drabs. But yeah, I want to see what people are thinking, and we'll give you our thoughts on it.
Yeah.
To kind of make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah. So we'll throw it out there. Anyone joining us live in chat, let us know if you're already doing anything with CRL partitions, and we'll come back around to that. So why don't we, obviously, we've got some introductions here. I'll introduce myself. I'm Mark Cooper. I'm the former president, sorry. I'm the founder and CEO of PKI Solutions. And Jake?
I'm Jake Brainard. I'm the consultant or lead consultant, now architect.
Yeah, well, now distinguished PKI
architect.
Exactly.
This is a net new thing.
Yes, we've got some great things going on here. So you've got two of our brightest minds, if we have to say it ourselves, focused on our topic today. So we're going to go through a couple of areas. One of those is just around what the heck CRL partitioning is. We can kind of talk a little bit about why organizations would even need it, or what matters, kind of the history. We certainly have seen CRL partitions from other products.
Yeah, it's not a new concept.
Not a new
concept.
Microsoft. Yeah. But it's probably also something that may not be applicable to some customers, right?
I think it's not going to be.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. So we'll talk about what it is, and then, I like the way that you kind of phrase this. Is it a solution in search of a problem?
Correct.
I can think of a few organizations I've worked with over the last 25 years that could use something like this, because the alternative is a complex one, right? Because the alternative is OCSV or something else.
Exactly, or a renewal, or essentially closing one off, but you're still dealing with the ramifications of that large CRL path.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we jump in? So we've got this thing of CRL partitions. Why don't we spend a little bit of time kind of talking about revocation, CRLs, OCSV, deltas, like what are all the different bits and pieces?
Yeah, so we always joke that revocation is one of the most important overlooked parts of PKI. When I first joined the company and actually listened to Mark deliver his first course, I was watching him, and he brought up the great point that PKI outages don't usually cause problems for clients that can't issue certificates. It's when revocation breaks. That's when all the issues really happen. So
because the issuance doesn't tend to be a mission critical. Now it's a little different now, because we'll have non-persistent desktops, and we'll have virtual machines and microservices and manufacturing. I mean, there are some dependencies around issuance, but for typical run-of-the-mill enterprise, they've issued their certs out, something can't renew, it's generally not a timely issue, because it just kind of try a little.
It's not a all broken right now kind of thing, like it is if revocation were to fail. So, so I guess with that, there are a lot of different tools that we currently have in our bag that we can throw at this. We have our standard CRLs, and that can be on a web server or an Active Directory. We have online responder. We have Delta CRLs, and now we're kind of bringing this new thing with the partitioning of CRLs.
Yeah, and in some ways, if you know about a Delta CRL, it's almost like a daily partition. So when we're kind of talking about the partitioning, Deltas have kind of done that, but in a very ephemeral, temporary way. It's a similar concept. It's just a more permanent structure.
Yeah, and they do kind of fade away. But Delta CRLs were never overly popular. I always tell clients a lot of times they can hurt us, but they don't always help us.
Yeah.
A lot of applications don't use them. However, if something goes wrong and we're not able to publish one, a lot of things will fail because of it.
Yeah.
There's an overarching problem.
Yeah. So I think it all kind of goes back to the problem statement, or the original issue is ACA has a revocation list. And anytime we do certificate validation, we have to be able to check that revocation.
Right, that's right.
And many systems, Windows and others, when they get a revocation list, they'll download it and they'll cache it, and they can keep it for a period of time, a day, an hour, a week, a year, whatever that is. Right. But things like Windows and browsers have a finite amount of time to be able to locate the CRL, suck it over to the network, process the file, look for the information, and return a result.
Correct.
If we have a CRL that's too big, we may not be able to do that in time.
Exactly. You can end up, I think when I first joined, I remember you telling me about a story from the past where a client essentially locked themselves out with a giant CRL because they were using smart cards.
Yeah.
And they couldn't process that CRL on time, and they couldn't log on.
Yeah, there were actually a couple of related issues. One is if you have a sufficiently large CRL, and it's always the subjective thing. What's a large CRL? And when we talk about this in our training course, a large CRL for one organization is very different for someone else. I did work at a hospitality organization years ago, and they had remote hotels in very rustic places and very slow satellite links. For them, the size of a CRL that they could squeeze through on a timely basis was very different than a large organization that could move megabytes of information in sub-seconds. So very subjective thing. But we're essentially talking about a few seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, a number of seconds, which for some organization, a CRL that's half a meg may be too big.
Exactly.
Someone else, it could be 20 meg. But in this particular case, one of the problems that you'll see is like inconsistent certificate validation, because a product may go out and say, I need a revocation list, start the download and not complete. And it comes back and says certificate can't be validated. That download continues. So you go, oh, that's weird, let me try again, and it works.
Right.
But then a week later, that CRL is timed out, you try again. That's that weird problem that we see in customer environments.
Right. And I would say over the years, maybe this dates me a little bit, but we can move more data now. Our networks are faster.
Yeah.
So something that might have been large 5-10 years ago isn't really that large today.
And it changes.
Yeah.
And you're right, the network could be faster, but if I got a 50 meg CRL, it's still going to take me time to look through that list, because the irony is that revocation list, it's just a long list of serial numbers. I still have to go look through there for each thing I want to validate. If I'm like a concentrator or a VPN system or something where I'm doing a lot of lookups, I have to look through that for every single validation that I do.
Right.
That's not even network timing. That's
Right.
just lots of stuff to look through.
Exactly.
So if we have a subjectively large CRL, these other solutions have been available for a while. Delta CRLs, OCSV, like how do they work different than just doing a CRL?
The Delta CRL, essentially, depending on the duration of that Delta CRL, let's say it's a 24-hour Delta CRL. We'll publish all the certificates revoked in that 24 hours to this Delta, and then the next day we'll publish another one. But we're not going to be always checking the base CRL, which could be very large, so it could speed that process up.
So it's like an incremental.
Exactly.
Right? I've got my full CRL that was 10 meg, and it took me a long time to suck it down, but it's good for a week. I can cache that for a week, and then each day I get a Delta that may only be a couple hundred K, and then each day a new Delta comes out. So yes, I'm moving stuff on a timely basis. I'm still getting up-to-date information. I'm not moving as much stuff through the network. But now we've got compatibility issues, right?
Exactly, because I would say anymore, maybe 50% of our clients are doing Delta CRLs, probably not. And it's dropping. Each time we do a new build migration, I see it less and less.
Yeah.
So it's not as popular as it used to be.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think one of the sneaker things about this, and this is like one of those areas of if you don't know, you don't know about deltas, is if something doesn't support a delta CRL, you may not know it doesn't support a delta CRL because a system is configured to go check the revocation list. The revocation list then says, hey, there's a fresher version, the delta, here's where you can go find. It's just an extension in the CRL. So if I have an application that's doing certificate validation, it may not even know how to do a delta, but it's not going to error out. It just doesn't know to look for that extension and then go find something else.
Exactly.
So deltas, unless you really know every system that is using your PKI and doing revocation, you may not even really be able to use delta CRLs, even though you've turned them on and assume.
And that's what we see is applications so often everything doesn't do revocation checking on an equal footing.
Yeah.
So we don't always know, and it's hard to always get that information up front. Yeah. So we don't know. We may think something's happening. Sure. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah. All right. So if delta CRLs have issue around compatibility and they're kind of the sneaky failing sort of thing, you could have revocation that's working. You may not be getting timely stuff because it doesn't support it. Our other alternative was OCSP. What's the problem with OCSP?
Well, OCSP works. It's configurable, but you may end up, if you're hitting checking a certain location too often, you're going to download the CRL anyway, the matched number. Yeah. We talked about that. But online responder is starting to fall out of favor a little bit, especially in the public sector, with maybe more on the privacy concerns. Because when you're checking a site, you know what you're checking for. Now. So now there's a record of that. Yeah. So that's been falling out of favor a little bit.
Yeah, it's a very transactional sort of thing where, when a system goes to an OCSP server and says, can you tell me if this thing is revoked? There's now this very public communication of where am I going, where am I wanting to validate? Right. There's also just that availability issue of OCSP because those systems, those servers, performance issues, security issues, because they're citing information. So now they have privileged keys that are trusted in an environment. So I have to have them up. I have to be highly available. I may also have systems that don't support OCSP.
That's also correct.
Yeah, and
it can, and there's some things behind the scenes that we talk about a lot with our clients where, depending on what you have in your environment, different challenges come in. For instance, online responder, we want to protect those keys. Well, if we protect them on a certain type of HSM, we could fill a partition. Yeah. So we have to be careful of that. Yeah. So there's all these other nuanced things behind it. And then so oftentimes what I see with our clients is online responder may end up being more chatty and more expensive than just downloading the CRL if it's small.
Exactly. So the one good thing is OCSP is at least industry standard. There are RFCs around it, but there's not necessarily a guarantee that systems are going to do it. I mean, RFC is just simply the guidelines, and if I make an appliance, I make a piece of software, I may choose not to implement an OCSP initiator to go out and do that verification. So from a third-party kind of vendor support, deltas are shaky. We know that we can consistently do them at least in a Windows environment.
Right. Yes.
We can consistently do OCSP inside of a Windows environment. After 25 years, I'd be hard-pressed to be able to go to an environment and look at every single system and go, yes, you can do Delta or OCSP. It would be,
I would agree.
We'd have to go check, right?
And there's so many third-party appliances where you actually configure and tell them. So if someone isn't, kind of in tune with what we're doing, they may configure it one way. It may technically support it, but it's just not configured to do so.
Yeah. And these are essentially PKI problems. This is not an ADCS specific problem. EJBCA, public CAs, they've all kind of grappled with how do I have manageable revocation information. And I've seen even interesting concepts of people saying, hey, can't we somehow tie this to a blockchain? What if we take revocation? So this is like one of the perennial problems that people are always trying to solve with. How do I do timely revocation of things? So it's not a new set of problems.
No.
But our options within ADCS specifically have been a bit limited. We can do deltas, we can do OCSP,
right?
But frankly, a lot of times we don't see deltas, a lot of times we don't see OCSP.
Right.
But it goes back to your point of it. Is it a solution looking for a problem? Because a lot of enterprises don't have large CRLs.
Exactly, and I think that's the thing is, looking at this at a higher level, if we have, like, I call it like a revocation strategy.
Yeah.
So how often are we revoking?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to be revoking that much? Is it something where we are doing a lot of automated revocation that may not suit everything very well and could impact the environment and with a large CRL?
Yeah. So I think, as we look at this, and we're going to talk about what these partitions are, one of our approaches tends to be the pragmatic PKI approach.
Right.
If there's a new feature or capability or something, if it provides value, if it's solving a problem, by all means, look at it and implement it. But just because there's a checkbox, just because there's some way of doing X, Y, Z, you may actually be causing more problems. And then this isn't just a PKI. I know I go buy a new TV, it's got all these new bits and pieces on it. Oh, let me try what this thing does, and inevitably something breaks, right? It's the age-old, here's a bunch of new power, make sure you use it in the right way.
Right.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the state of revocation. So why don't we talk a little about how things like revocation strategy are changing? We deal with customers that are IoT and manufacturing, non-persistent desktops. Now, how is revocation and some of the things that customers are asking me about today different than maybe some of the things that we were seeing 10 or 20 years ago?
I think one of the biggest shifts that we've seen, I'd say the last 5 years, is we're seeing a lot of non-persistent and very short duration certificates, whether it's a single sign-on solution, a hosted desktop type solution, where we're issuing a lot of certificates that have a date shorter than what our CRL is possibly. But we're still seeing revocation, and then mobile devices. Certain mobile devices in the past, some of the managers, if they weren't able to successfully install a certificate, they'll automatically revoke it. And I've seen in the past thousands of revocations a day. Someone would unlock their phone, and they'd lock it before the certificate was installed, and they'd revoke all the certificates, and they'll do it again and again. So things that can kind of bloat the CRL.
I know I've seen things where embedded systems and IoT systems where they go, we're actually not going to do revocation. And there's actually something that a lot of organizations interact with. You probably know that whole stir shaking thing that we kind of dipped our toes into a little while ago. In that telecom space, there just isn't enough bandwidth to do revocation.
Right, it
doesn't
looks
exist.
Completely different.
They're very different.
Sure. And, so I guess just having that strategy of being aware, what do we actually need to do? What should we be doing? Will help us drive these decisions and make them wiser, because what we'll touch on here in a moment is this is something that it isn't a simple, let's dip our toe in the water. Once you start this, you're kind of committed.
It really is. I think you use the phrase "it's a cliff." There's no back. And I think when we started talking about it, I was like, are you really sure that it works this way? And you guys did. I think the other thing is, when we kind of talk about the size of the CRL really mattering here, is that in some places we do see large CRLs because they're using mobile device systems, and there tends to be a lot of these components that are being managed and getting revoked, or even in manufacturing spaces where we're dealing with non-persistent desktops. We are dealing with things where there's a lot more revocation. We're also seeing more third-party products using certificates that may incorrectly revoke something, even though it's not necessary. And we've seen that with, what was it, Cisco or some of the other products that we've seen when we've gone to change a CA renewal and affected things downstream, right?
Well, if you renew a root in Intune, that we wanted to get rid of a lot of certificates. They call it mobile, used to be AirWatch, I think it's mobile one, or whatever AirWatch is called now. They've had issues in the past with doing a lot of mass revokings. And then I guess the other thing that can kind of come out of this is if I see a client with a really large CRL, it may be not so much that they're revoking a lot of certificates, but the duration or the validity of the certificates is so long, they hang around forever.
Yeah, it can definitely be a problem, right? So, okay, so we've kind of established that there's a variability to revocation strategies in organizations. It's a subjective thing. There are alternative tools that have been around. So if we've got all these tools, we've got impactful areas, why do you think CRL partitioning came out? What's your thinking behind that?
Well, I think it does solve a problem.
Yeah.
I think it was probably maybe a quicker win for Microsoft. They're starting to invest in the product again.
Yeah.
They're doing dev on the product again. So it's a great win there. Us personally, across all our clients, I can think of a handful of clients this would be useful for.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you know, when I first saw this announcement, I started thinking, what was that driver? Because getting that team going, and there's a number of things they're working. They've been making great progress on the post-quantum cryptography. They now have that within the driver itself. We're just waiting for the certificate services interface. But someone, somewhere must have finally paid heed to things I've been saying for a while that, hey, if you can prove a big enough business impact and you can get Microsoft to do something about it, then I'll help you get there. So obviously they got some feedback. I don't think this was just something they drew off of before. It's not a new concept, but for some reason it was significant to that. So we know that there's activity going on with certificate services development again. What kind of questions are we getting? Or do we have anyone coming to us from our customers asking about CRL partitioning? Are they even aware of it yet?
Not really. It's not coming up. I haven't gotten a single question about it, other than honestly, when we brought it up, people are watching the webinar, people are hearing about it, they want to know more about what it is. So when you brought this up in our last webinar, it's something I've been kind of wanting to do as well, is shine some more light on it and say, if you are thinking about it, just make sure you don't rush into anything.
Sure.
Investigate it fully. So we know.
Okay. All right. So I think it's new enough that people are asking about it, but we can't help ourselves. So I know when this first came out, one of the ways it impacted us is with PKI Spotlight.
Correct.
Because we review revocation lists, we check locations, we're kind of doing that real-time monitoring and alerting. We quickly realized by having CRL partitioning in an environment, our product would break.
Correct.
It just isn't designed or wasn't designed for that. And we're now having to update what we do. That tells me I know we're at the tip of the spear because we're that close to it. I can only imagine what other products are going to encounter when they're trying to consume revocation.
Correct.
I think the good news, though, is the end result, something that's just doing basic revocation, probably won't see much of a difference. It doesn't function any differently. It is just one certificate may have a different revocation list, their location, and then the one that came right after.
Correct. Yeah.
So most applications probably won't have a problem, but that is simply because they're ignorant of the underlying products that are there.
Right.
So with that, what is it? When we're talking about CRL partitioning, how would you describe it in the problems it solves?
Basically, we are taking a CRL. If you think of a CRL as an entire pie, rather than consuming that entire pie, we're going to cut it up into slices, whether that be 2, 4, 6, 8. I mean, I don't know if there's an upper limit I've seen. I think you can go quite high, but and then dynamically, the CA, when a certificate is revoked, it will write it to a specific, let's say it's CRL number 6.
Yeah.
We're right there, and that gets placed in the CDP section, so clients would know to go to look for number 6 versus number 4 or 2.
Yeah. So instead of a CA having a revocation list, we'll just call it file 1, right? It's file 1.crl. CA puts everything in there, and that could be 1K of size. It could be 100 meg CRL size. We're now talking about having multiple files, each a revocation list, but then each certificate is assigned to one, meaning when this certificate is issued, it says when it's revoked, its information is going to go into file number 1. The next certificate, when it's revoked, would go into file number 2.
Yeah.
So as a result, that certificate, when it's issued, its location to say which CRL you should look at, maybe file 1, maybe file 2, file 3. So we wind up distributing that load. If it's a 10 meg CRL without partitioning, and we have 10 of them,
Right.
we now have 1 meg.
Yeah,
Right?
and 1 meg file.
There's
versus
1 meg file.
One big 10 meg file.
Exactly. So the partitioning is really a way of kind of solving, moving information. We still have the same amount of revocation information, but it makes the amount of details I have to transfer as a relying system and validating a certificate, I only need to move 1.
Right, because that client only needs to download and cache away that if they have 1 certificate, again, they may have more, but they'll download that 1 file.
Yeah. I think the other side of this is if I'm something like that VPN concentrator or some type of server system where I'm looking at a lot of certificates, I still need to move 10 meg, but now I'm moving 10 1
And
meg
handling
files.
10 individual files. Yeah.
My total storage, which tends not to be the problem of, do I have
Right.
10 meg storage? Not a problem. But now I can much more efficiently in an amount of time move 10 1 meg files.
Right.
Plus, I may not need to move them all at the same time.
That's-
Because I'm looking at this cert, I need to move that 1 meg file. It may not be an hour until I need to move the other one again.
Right.
So what's some of the things that you found as you've gone through? So we've got the ability to do partitioning. Does it work along with Delta and OCSP, or is this an or thing?
As far as the Delta CRLs go, I don't know if I worked it out with the Delta.
That would be interesting, right? That'd be fun. Okay, we have 10 partitions with Deltas, so then we would have 10 Deltas, and now we got 20 CRLs.
Yes, and this is where I'm kind of going. It starts to make your head spin a little bit here, but these other strategies are out there. I guess my biggest thing with this is as we continue to use these other utilities as part of our strategy, once we go into this path, just like anyone who's ever done a migration, one of the things we always have to do is we're trying to decommission old PKI. We have to deal with the life of those certificates until they expire.
Yeah.
So whether, like you said, it's file 1, file 2, file 3, we're going to need to keep those around forever.
Yeah.
And once we write into them, we own them.
Yeah, and this is probably the number one gotcha that I was super surprised. Like I was like, there's no way that this is right. So let's make sure that everybody who watches this realizes what we have discovered. And I won't give it away so you can go to it. But the premise was set up when we were talking about getting Spotlight reconfigured to detect CRL partition. We also want to make sure we can detect best practices. Is it configured? Because you can do things like, hey, there's 5 partitions, but you never turned it on. That kind of stuff, right? Oh, I thought I had partition. No, you don't. You said 5, but you never turned it on. That kind of stuff. But then one, I don't remember if it was you or Mike Bruno, one of you said something like, oh, by the way, if you set 5 partitions and you start issuing stuff out, so we'll just go down the scenario, turn on 5 partitions, I've issued a number of certificates, and when those certificates are created, again, they're stamped with which CRL do you have? CRL 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? The scenario was, okay, 6 months from now, you go, oh, yeah, 5 was too much. I should probably just do 4. And you said what?
It will let you, but it will fail, obviously.
It'll let you make that change. And what fails?
We're going to stop publishing for that one. Unlike, I guess the closest scenario would be when you renew a CA certificate, you don't tell it to continue to publish the CRL for the original key and the new key. It just does it. That's when you see that 1 or 2 or whatever in parentheses. It just cuts it off. It's done.
This was a real surprise to me.
We have orphan.
You have essentially broken all of those certificates. So 5 partitions, we then say, hey, we only want to do 4 partitions. In my mind, what that meant, this is my assumption, is I would have assumed the CA would have continued to publish the 5 CRLs, because I've got 5, 10, 15, 1,000 certificates that are tied to CRL number 5. And as long as they're around, that CRL needs to be published.
Correct.
But by changing the 4, meant going forward, I was only going to use 4 partitions, 4 of those files. That's the way I assume. And I probably put anyone that's watching this would probably assume the same thing. I had these certificates.
We have a precedent in the past of how that was accomplished.
Absolutely. You renew the CA, it has to publish the old CRL with the old key and the new CRL with the new key. However, this feature doesn't do that. You can shoot yourself. This isn't shooting yourself in your foot. This is cutting your leg off at the knee. This says, okay, you want to go to 4, sure. No warning messages, nothing. And every certificate, if you haven't gone through to figure out what one's tied to CRL number 5, suddenly stops working.
Right.
Or at least stops working once the CRL that was previously published expires.
Yeah.
Can you switch back? If you go to 4, can you go back?
If I'm
now putting it as 5. I didn't do that.
Can
you switch back to 5 and
does
start
it
working?
go right back into, that's a good question.
I wouldn't have. I'm going to guess if the logic is so flawed that it goes, okay, I only need to publish 4 CRLs. If there's 5, I think it would.
Well, sure.
All right. Now
I'll update. I will let you know.
So this is another example of the staff raw approach to the PKI. There's a lot of powers that you could do. There's not necessarily a lot of warnings that's going to say this is going to shoot you in the foot. So the challenge is going to be, is entirely possible for someone here to wind up working with a PKI. Say someone turns on CRL partitioning, it's working great, except for 10 or 20 partitions. 2 years down the road, someone comes in and does an assessment. Somebody looks at this and goes, this is silly. I got 20 CRLs and they're half a K a piece.
Right.
Why am I doing that? We should just go back to 1 CRL. That seems simple enough. 1 little registry key, 1 CRL.
Yep. Change the setting in our publishing, and you're back to where you were.
95% of the environment stops working for It just sounds like an amazing feature. I just don't know what this sounds like. Now, Michael's saying it sounds like a bug. As a former Microsofter for 10 years, this is not a bug, it's a feature. There may be some unintended ability that you as an organization may be able to leverage as a feature. And I will at least point out the fact that there is the longstanding principle of Microsoft of anything that you do in the registry may cause problems. I know this, that the only way you can configure this is in the registry.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
I think the other thing that got me is if you're kind of a long-standing certificate services person, is the fact that we had another conversation about this that was astounding to me, and that is when you're working in the registry, all of the syntax for building a CRL and AIO, it's all that %1, %3 kind of stuff.
Right.
And then when you're in the UI and you're working with the UI, which is not great, but it works,
Right.
and you've got that insert this, insert that. It does the bracketed style, right? And that bracketed style gets translated into the % style.
Right.
What did you find out though?
These are literals.
Yeah. Meaning what?
So meaning we'll do the actual name. We're not using variables any longer.
Yeah.
Which
wasn't it the bracketed style like the UI, but the bracketed style is in the registry? Is that what it was? Because there was some variability to it. And I thought it was
literal.
It was like %1, %3, %4, but then there was a bracketed, but it's in the registry side.
That might be. I have to go back and turn it on again. And I guess just a side note on that as well. If you only go halfway with this and you forget to turn something off, it's a new error message where your CA won't start.
Yeah. Oh,
Once you've never seen it. Yeah. If you leave it in the registry, even if you haven't fully enabled it, your CA will not start.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of ways that this can go sideways, and some new syntaxes. I'll chalk it up to, as this team is being rebuilt, there may be some old precedents that are things that aren't there. Someone said, I feel like a blog post coming. Yes, we've got blog posts. I know Adam's got a few blog posts that are out there. There are definitely some gotchas to this.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, if you need it, if you've got a specific requirement, this is not just an easy go into registry and turn one thing on or go to the UI and you're set to go.
Yeah.
This is
we need to look long term for this. A revocation strategy, including this, needs to be one that it's thought out, that we know we're going to be able to do this, and we're looking that we actually need to do this.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Do you want to make any bets on when we'll see our first customer that's actually turned on CRL partitioning?
I'll bet
we'll see it this year.
We'll see it this year. And I'm going to guess the first one I get is not going to be a happy ending.
Okay.
That would be my guess.
I will put a case of Red Bull on there for you.
Okay.
So if we see our first, now please don't go out and do it just so that Jake gets his Red Bull. But if there are any customers that we see out there, that have this issue, then you'll get that rental. All right, let's turn to some questions. I know that we've got a couple questions that came out. So one is, have you run into any particular security challenges when setting up CRL partitioning? Is there anything from role separation or other kind of security issues or anything else that associated with this?
Yeah, and in my testing, I've not seen anything like that. As far as I'm not sure if we're going to how we're controlling who's an admin of the server,
Yeah.
or the CA, or if that's what it was. I haven't seen anything like that.
I suspect maybe some of it may be other supporting systems, like maybe where the CRLs are being written on file systems or load balancers that aren't used to there being, maybe.
Well, the only other thing I was thinking of possibly, with Delta CRLs, how we have the plus symbol.
Yeah.
How IS has to be configured differently
yeah.
to accept those, but it's not a case like that I've seen so far.
Okay.
They don't look that much different, new characters.
Yeah. I do suppose I would probably take that back a little bit. Maybe this is one of those nefarious security things. We talked about how applications react differently when they can't do certificate validation. It's entirely possible. If we take the extreme example, 5 partitions, we change to 4, we've abandoned one of those here. I could have a system that goes, like most web browsers try to do revocation checking, but they fail silently. Imagine that scenario where I rolled that before. I'm not publishing information about the system anymore. I may have some application that this goes, well, I can't find a CRL, I'll just let it in. It may fail open, soft fail, right? So we know web browsers are that way. I would hate it to be a firewall or a VPN system, who knows? So from a security perspective, you may inadvertently wind up with one of these silent failures and things keep working because validation's not stopping, no one's getting ignored, it's because it failed over.
Right.
So there could be some security issues with that. OCSP stapling. I don't know how much you get into OCSP stapling.
Not much, not really at all.
So OCSP stapling, this is where typically on the web server side, rather than web server going, hey, here's my certificate, you go figure out revocation, is the web server's already gone to the OCSP server and grabbed the response that says, hey, this server certificate is valid, and staples it and sends it to the client all at the same time. So it cuts down on the amount of transmission of stuff that you have to do. Now, it would work because OCSP, whatever is doing that, the stapling is happening at the server level. It still goes to OCSP. OCSP, depending on what product you use, Microsoft OCSP servers just look at the revocation list.
Right.
So if you've got CRL partitioning, assuming you've updated your OCSP server, because when you set that up, you say, which CRL do I want to go look at? I got 5 partitions. I need to make sure I've got a revocation provider pointing at all 5. Right?
Yes.
So in theory, it should work fine. It should be in there okay, but nothing would prevent stapling from working with partitioning. But I don't necessarily know that I would go to partitioning instead of stapling.
I agree, and I can see where that's a step that gets missed a lot of times in renewals and migrations, that creating those additional revocation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Other questions, where does OCSP fit here? I thought it was another way of addressing one CRLs. I mean, kind of going back to what we talked about at the top of the day.
You know what, I think for an internal environment, I think it may still have a place. Honestly, the majority of the time I see online responder and environments, they have such a small URL, they probably don't need it anyway.
Yeah.
But I know there's also some custom things we cover in one of our courses, and I've done with some other clients where you can really massage OCSP to be very dynamic. You can have it report off of a delta, even if you're not publishing deltas to everybody else, to give a quicker response. Yeah. So there's some things you can do there.
Yeah. I think these are all, well, let's call them revocation tools in the belt. We've got revocation lists, we've got deltas, we've got OCSP, we've got OCSP stapling, we've got CRL partitioning. Right. I think the interesting thing is when we look at some of the other products that are out there, like Assertia does OCSP a little differently. Mm-hmm. They do CRL partitioning differently. So CRL partitioning isn't anything unique to ADCS, right, but how they do it and what they do is a very different kind of way. Right. One of the things I wish that we could have done CRL partitioning, and my bias going in when I first heard that there was going to be partitioning was based on what I've seen in other products, which I think would have been a better way. And that would have been to say, how big do I want my CRLs to be? So rather than saying, I've got 5 CRL partitions, I kind of have to assume how big those things are. I have to work backwards. Well, I'm going to do 100,000 certs in a little, like I have to do the math backwards. And all I was really doing is distributing.
Mm-hmm.
I think an almost an easier way would have been to say, how big do I want each of my CRLs?
Right.
So basically say, hey, I want to do partitioning, but I don't want my CRLs to ever get bigger than a 2 meg. So every certificate that gets issued gets tied to CRL 1, and it can say, hey, I can only fit so many serial numbers, because that's all that goes into the revocation. Serial number, why it was revoked, and the date, right? Pretty minimal stuff. We could probably fit a few tens of thousands of certificates per revocation list in a meg.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So at some point we could say, hey, after I've issued 20,000 certs, my CRL would potentially be 2 meg. So then I should start the next partition, right? And I will grow that until it could theoretically reach the next one. Now, the reality is I may not revoke much stuff, and CRL 1 may be very small, but I've issued enough that they were all to be revoked, that CRL would grow to 2 meg. Right. Then we're simply growing partitions in perpetuity based off of size.
Based on need.
That solves the how much data am I moving. That's much easier for me as an architect to say, hey, I'm trying to get around a size limitation thing. I also don't have things like, oh, I've had 5 partitions on the 4 part. You don't. You simply say the size, because at that point, if I said, hey, I want my CRLs to be 1 meg in size, then going forward, that limit is 1 meg. I may have a bunch that were 2 meg for a while, and then I've changed it to 1 meg. Because it's product team, if they're listening, in the drinks, that's how I would have thought that this would have gone on. Well, anything else that you would add on the partition that we didn't get to, Jake?
Really just, my concern is that someone is going to jump without looking.
Yeah.
Just make sure you think it through. Make sure before you enable this that you know what you're signing yourself up for. It's not inherently, it's not a bad thing. Just know that you're going to need to live with this for a while.
Yeah.
And if you do turn it off, like you said, we're going to have to fix some things.
Yeah. So if you already have it on, call us before you turn it off.
Yeah.
If you don't have it on, call us before you turn it on.
That would be best.
Do your homework. It's great to have new tools. It's great to have new capabilities.
Correct.
Use it with moderation. Make sure you know what you're doing. This is still a space that we are trying to figure out all of the best practices.
How to really get the most out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still working on those.
Where are those other places where we haven't even thought of yet that you can shoot yourself in the foot, like changing number of partitions, weird variables that are not so variable and don't look quite the right way.
Yeah.
We haven't even updated our training content for this.
No, I haven't added yet.
Yeah.
There's something I will be working on for sure to get that added, because this is something that I think is going to eventually get out there. Online Responder came out and people did it just because it was there.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, we're almost at the end of our time here. So I'm going to throw a couple things out to our audience. One is, if you like this kind of content, if you're enjoying us kind of digging into some of these new features, follow up, let us know, send us feedback, let us know on our website, on our social. If Jake needs to come out more often, and we need to do this live, let me know. We'll even bring out a nice little Red Bull refrigerator. We can keep it on tap for you, keep it going. That's always an option as well. I know we've got a case of Red Bull on the line for our next customer at the CRL partitioning. Do you want to make any forecasts for what we might see from the product team this year? And you can't just say ADCS support for post-quantum, because we know that's already there. Anything else?
I would have to guess right now.
Yeah.
It's moving, and I think to me that's the best sign that we've seen in a long time. This is an exciting time to be in a space that has been pretty stagnant for a while, and now it's becoming more dynamic, which is a great thing.
Yeah. I see Reva asked about that single chapter offering. We've actually been talking about taking our existing courses, offering them up a la carte.
That was kind of my goal for this, was to make things a little bit smaller, a little more digestible. People could pop in and pop out, and then because we can bring them to bear faster if they're smaller.
Well, I think with some of the hires we've got going on, of some additional resources coming on, I think we're going to have our own little mini production studio. We could just have a whole little training course in CRL partitioning and some screen sharing, and let people.
There's some out there that we've needed to hit for a long time. I really want to get to.
Yeah. So if you got ideas, send them in. Well, thanks everyone for showing up to the January 2026 kickoff of the PKI Insights. We appreciate everyone coming. We appreciate the questions. We look forward to your follow-up suggestions, and we will see you next month. Do we know what the topic is yet? I think so. I think we've got a lot going on. So stay tuned. We'll get that out there, and we'll continue the series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great seeing you, Jake.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
All right. Take care, everyone, and we will see you next month. Take care.